So now Zahi Hawass would like to meet with Kevin Hart to prove to him that the ancient Egyptians were not black and did not build the pyramids.
I got the perfect name for it. Super dummies.
I think this would be a powerful debate if done right. Obviously, we know that Kevin Hart is not an archaeologist and Zahi Hawass is looking for an easy win. Kevin Hart, if you are listening to this, I think I speak for all of us when I say please take one of our powerful scholars with you and televise it so everyone can see one of the modern Egyptians' most prominent archaeologists get intellectually dog walked in front of the whole world. In my opinion, Ashraquazi would be a great candidate. Another great candidate would be Robert Bauval, being how Robert Bauval is also an archaeologist who was born in Egypt and really believes that Zahi Hawass is highly against a black Egypt. Robert Bauval and Hawass have been at odds for several years now, so Zahi Hawass would probably not take that debate. In fact, he has a history of deliberately walking out of debates when the op makes a reference of Robert Bauval's work. For instance, back in April of 2015 at the Mena House Hotel, Zahi Hawass and historian Graham Hancock had been billed as the first open debate between the representatives of two completely different versions of history. On the night of the event, as Graham Hancock was focusing his slides prior to giving his opening presentation, Hawass saw that one slide contained a photograph of Hancock's colleague Robert Bauval. Hawass immediately became angry and began to shout at Hancock, insisting that he censor his talking points and remove all references of Robert Bauval. When Hancock explained that his alternative presentation could not exclude the Orion correlation and therefore could not exclude Robert Bauval, Zahi Hawass continued to shout and eventually marched out of the debate. So apparently Ryan Garcia and Zahi Hawass have a lot in common. They both look for easy fights and seem to slither their way out when presented with a formidable opponent. What possibly could Zahi Hawass say that would convince Kevin Hart that the ancient Egyptians were not black? He'll probably mention the three mummies that were discovered in Lower Egypt that is claimed to have a Middle Eastern origin and connects the modern Egyptians through the E1B1B lineage. Funny how the E1B1B lineage linking to the modern Egyptians is so substantial, but at the same time Ramses III linking to sub-Saharan Africans is disregarded. Yet the three mummies came from a later period in Egypt, specifically from the Greek and Roman period. And even the study tells you that it was done in one location and does not represent the entire Egyptian population, because when you go further south, the people may show a higher amount of sub-Saharan African origin. So Kevin Hart could easily checkmate him on that point. No one can make such bold statements based off one location. Another thing Arab centrists like to do is show this graph as if it proves that the Arabs only make up 17% of the Egyptian population.
I got the perfect name for it. Super dummies.
Obviously, this is trickology at its finest, because the graph is not based on the Egyptian population, it's based off the overall North African population. And this graph is referenced by the Arabs' J1 lineage, but it's not accurate because Arabs can also be E1B1B. I find it quite hilarious when modern Egyptians post their DNA and it says their autosomal DNA is 90% Egyptian and Western Asian. The Western Asian part is not up there for decoration. It means you cluster with people from Western Asia. As Soa Kiyata said, if the ancient Egyptians came from Western Asia, then they would have spoken a Semitic language. Unfortunately, they did not. Zahi Hawass may show his most recent discovery to prove a white Egypt. I find it highly suspicious that just weeks before Kevin Hart's Cairo performance that a new discovery comes out. You can call me an Afrocentric conspiracy theorist if you want, but a brother brought this to my attention the other day. If you was wondering how far the Arab and Eurocentric would go faking evidence to deny Black Africa's glory, then look no further than Charles Dawson, who in 1912 claimed to have discovered the 500,000-year-old missing link, which came out later to be a fake. Furthermore, Zahi Hawass can only show statues of light-skinned servants from the Old Kingdom. He can never present a statue of a light-skinned pharaoh because it didn't exist. All the pharaohs from the Old Kingdom all the way to the 20th dynasty were black. In fact, the 20th dynasty is considered to be the last dynasty of the royal bloodline. The question Kevin Hart should ask Zahi Hawass is, where did the ancient Egyptian culture originate from? That would be a kill shot question, and he may start to filibuster and give this exotic lie as if the culture came from Eurasia or the Fayum region. But if the ancient Egyptian culture started from there, then why is the oldest known in Egypt found closer to the borders of the Sudan and not the Mediterranean? Based on archaeological and historical evidence, King Narmer came down the Nile and unified the two lands. There were no Egyptian culture in Lower Egypt until the Battle of Unification. The hieroglyphs, the kingship, the god Haru, it all came from the south. And we know who built the pyramids because the ancient Egyptians left primary evidence of what the pyramid builders looked like. They were black. Ancient Egyptians had no problem with identifying a person of lighter or darker skin. I'm not saying that everyone that lived in ancient Egypt was black, but the ancient Egyptian culture is more expressive to the identity of the black African.